The clinking of silverware often meant a fragile peace in my parents' dining room, a brief truce in the unspoken tension that always seemed to hum beneath the surface. I'd just finished sharing news of my promotion at the architecture firm in Chicago when, without warning, Chloe's fork clattered onto her plate. "You know what would make my wedding absolutely perfect?" she asked, her gaze fixed on me, strangely cold. "If you just disappeared from this family forever." The air went out of the room, leaving only the scent of roasted meat, a comfort that suddenly felt suffocating. I sat there, stunned, waiting for someone to laugh, to dismiss her words, to say she'd gone too far. My mother continued meticulously carving her roast beef. My father reached for his wine glass. Neither looked up. "I'm serious," Chloe pressed, leaning back in her chair with a chillingly satisfied smile. "That's the only gift I want from you, Olivia. Your absence." I started to protest. "Chloe, but my mother's hand shot up, a silent command for me to stop. "Your sister is getting married," she said, her voice laced with that familiar exasperation she reserved exclusively for me. "Could you try not to make everything about yourself for once?" My throat tightened, a painful knot forming. I wasn't trying to make it about myself. I was just sharing news about work. "Always work with you," my father muttered, finally breaking his silence. "Never family, never what actually matters." They'd perfected this routine over the years. Chloe would launch the first strike, and then my parents would close ranks around her, leaving me on the outside, a ghost at my own family's table. I'd grown up believing we were all loved equally, that sisters squabbled but families stayed united. College had been a slow, painful awakening. Every call home revealed how conversations flowed more smoothly without my input, how plans revolved around Chloe's schedule, while mine was an afterthought. "I put a deposit down on the venue yesterday," Chloe announced, shifting her attention to my mom. "The lakeside estate we toured last month. It can fit 300 guests comfortably." My mom's face lit up. "Oh, sweetheart, that's wonderful. We'll need to update the guest list this weekend." I pushed food around my plate, my appetite long gone. The promotion I'd worked 18 months for, the one I'd been so proud of, now felt utterly meaningless. My supervisor had called me into his office that morning, praising my designs for the Sterling complex, explaining how the senior architect position came with a corner office and creative control over major accounts. I'd driven to my parents' house bursting with the news, imagining my dad's proud smile, my mom's excited hug. Instead, I got this. "The flowers alone will cost $15,000, Chloe was saying, "but it's worth it. This wedding needs to be flawless. Nothing but the best for our girl." My dad agreed, reaching over to pat her hand. "Our girl, singular. Never our girls." I excused myself early, citing fatigue from a long week. No one protested. Chloe was already scrolling through wedding dress photos on her phone, and my mom had moved her chair closer to get a better look. My dad poured himself another glass of wine, settling in for what would likely be hours of wedding planning. The drive back to my apartment in Chicago took 40 minutes. 40 minutes of replaying that conversation, examining every angle like a bruise I couldn't stop pressing. Chloe's words echoed loudest. She hadn't been joking. The cruelty in her expression, the casual way she'd suggested I vanish, she meant every syllable. My phone buzzed as I unlocked my door. A text from my mom: "Remember to send your RSVPs for the engagement party. Chloe wants a final head count. No, drive safely. No, thanks for coming to dinner." Just another reminder that I existed in their world only as a task to complete. A box to check. I'd spent 28 years trying to earn their affection. My straight-A report cards would grace the refrigerator for a week before being replaced by Chloe's participation ribbons. I graduated summa cum laude from an Ivy League architecture program. They'd attended the ceremony, but left early to catch Chloe's community theater performance. I won a regional design competition at 25. Dinner conversation that night focused on Chloe's new boyfriend, Liam, and his promising career in real estate. The pattern was undeniable. Yet, I kept hoping things would change. Maybe this achievement will be the one that makes them see me. Perhaps this time they'll recognize my worth. Chloe's wedding demand shattered that illusion completely. I opened my laptop, pulled up my bank accounts, and started calculating. The promotion came with a substantial raise, but more importantly, I'd been saving aggressively for years. Between my salary, bonuses, and investment returns, I'd accumulated enough to make a significant move. Sleep proved elusive that night. I lay in bed, watching shadows shift across the ceiling, thinking about what Chloe had really asked for. She wanted me gone from the family. She'd said it plainly, without hesitation, and my parents had tacitly agreed. Fine, I could arrange that. But first, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. Over the next 2 weeks, I started paying closer attention during family interactions. I accepted my mom's invitation to help address wedding invitations, watching how she and Chloe worked together with an easy rhythm that automatically excluded me. I showed up for a Sunday barbecue my dad hosted, observing how he consulted Chloe about grilling techniques while handing me plates to carry inside. I attended a bridesmaid dress fitting Chloe organized, noting how she'd selected styles flattering to everyone except me. The evidence accumulated relentlessly. They didn't just prefer Chloe, they actively resented my presence. Mom asked about your RSVP again, Chloe said during the fitting, examining herself in a full-length mirror. You're coming to the engagement party, right? Wouldn't miss it, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. She turned, studying me with narrowed eyes. You've been weird lately. Quieter. Just busy with work. Always work. She echoed my dad's words from that dinner, the disdain identical. You know, Liam's cousin is single. Maybe if you focus less on your career and more on finding someone, you'd understand why this wedding matters so much. The other bridesmaids, Chloe's college friends, giggled nervously. I smiled and nodded, playing the role expected of me. That evening, I contacted a real estate attorney named Marcus Thorne. His firm specialized in property transactions, and his reputation for discretion was excellent. We met at his office downtown, a sleek space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the financial district. I need to understand something about property ownership, I began, settling into a leather chair across from his desk. My parents' house. If I'm listed as part owner, what are my legal rights? Marcus Thorne folded his hands, his expression carefully professional. That depends on how the deed is structured. Do you have documentation? I'd done my homework. Years ago, when I turned 21, my dad had added both Chloe and me to the house deed. He'd explained it as estate planning, ensuring we'd inherit smoothly when the time came. The property was listed under all 4 names as joint tenants with rights of survivorship. If you're a legal owner, Marcus Thorne explained after reviewing the documents I brought, you have the right to sell your portion of the property. However, with joint tenancy, it's more complex. Any owner can force a partition sale, which means selling the entire property and dividing proceeds, even if the other owners don't want to sell. He paused. Even then, though, it typically requires court intervention if they refuse to cooperate. I left his office with a plan forming. It felt radical, possibly vindictive, but Chloe had given me explicit permission to disappear. She'd requested it as her wedding gift. I intended to grant that wish more thoroughly than she'd ever imagined. The engagement party arrived on a Saturday evening in mid-June. My mom and dad's backyard had been transformed into an elegant garden reception, complete with string lights, a catered buffet, and a champagne fountain. 200 guests mingled on the lawn, celebrating Chloe and Liam's upcoming marriage. I wore a simple navy dress and minimal jewelry, intentionally understated. Chloe glowed in white, not quite a wedding gown, but close enough to signal her status as the bride-to-be. Liam stood beside her, tall and confident, greeting guests with practiced charm. "There you are." My mom appeared at my elbow, her smile tight. "We need you for family photos." The photographer arranged us on the patio, my mom and dad in the center, Chloe and Liam to their right, me on the far left like an afterthought. We smiled on command, the camera capturing what would become one of the last images of our family intact. Afterward, I approached Chloe near the champagne fountain. She was laughing with a group of sorority sisters, her hand resting possessively on Liam's arm. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" I asked quietly. She rolled her eyes but excused herself, following me to a quieter corner of the yard near the rose bushes. "What?" Her tone suggested I was already wasting her time. I wanted to say I've been thinking about what you said, about your wedding gift. Her expression brightened with surprise. "Really?" "Really. You asked me to disappear from the family, and I've decided you're right. That's exactly what I'm going to do." For a moment, she looked uncertain, as though sensing something beneath my words she couldn't quite identify. Then she laughed, sharp and dismissive. "Good. Honestly, Olivia, it'll be better for everyone. You've always been so awkward at family things anyway." "I'm glad we agree," I said, keeping my voice even. "I just wanted to let you know I'm granting your wish. Consider it my wedding present." She waved a hand, already losing interest. "Whatever. Just make sure you're not dramatic about it." I returned to the party, made polite conversation for another hour, then slipped away without fanfare. Nobody noticed my departure. They were too busy toasting Chloe's happiness, celebrating her bright future. Monday morning, I contacted Marcus Thorne again. "I want to proceed with the partition sale," I told him over the phone. "Whatever it takes." He walked me through the process. First, we'd attempt negotiation with my parents, offering them the opportunity to buy out my share of the property. If they refused or couldn't meet the fair market value, we'd file for a court-ordered partition sale, forcing the house onto the market. "This will cause significant family conflict," Marcus Thorne warned. "Are you certain?" "Completely certain." The house had been appraised recently for insurance purposes at $850,000. As a quarter owner, my share was worth $212,500. Not life-changing money by itself, but combined with my savings and investments, it represented freedom. Marcus Thorne drafted a formal letter to my parents explaining my intention to liquidate my portion of the property. He suggested a 60-day timeline for them to either purchase my share at fair market value or agree to sell the house and split proceeds. I had the letter delivered on a Wednesday afternoon via certified mail, requiring a signature. Then I waited. My dad called that evening. I let it go to voicemail. He called 4 more times. I ignored each attempt. My mom texted, "We need to talk about this ridiculous letter. Call me immediately." I didn't respond. Chloe sent a string of messages ranging from confused to furious. "What are you doing? This is insane. You're ruining everything. Call me back right now." I blocked her number. The beauty of having already decided to disappear was the freedom it provided. They couldn't guilt me into backing down because I'd already accepted the loss of their relationship. Chloe had asked for my absence. I was simply determining the terms. Thursday morning, Marcus Thorne called. "Your father wants to meet. He's threatening legal action." "On what grounds?" "Unclear. Mostly bluster, I suspect." "Will you take the meeting?" I agreed to see them Saturday afternoon at Marcus Thorne's office. Neutral territory, professional setting, my attorney present. The meeting was scheduled for 2 o'clock. I arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in a charcoal suit, my hair pulled back every inch the successful architect they'd never quite acknowledged. Marcus Thorne met me in the lobby, reviewing our strategy one final time. "Stay calm. Don't engage emotionally. And remember, you're well within your legal rights," he advised. My mom and dad walked in at 2 sharp. My mom's face was blotchy from crying. My dad looked furious, his jaw clenched, shoulders rigid with anger. We settled into the conference room, Marcus Thorne and I on one side of the long table, my parents on the other. The space felt cavernous, designed for corporate negotiations, not family implosions. "What is this really about?" my dad demanded before anyone else could speak. "You want money? Fine. Name your price and we'll figure something out. But forcing us to sell our home?" "I'm not forcing anything," I replied evenly. "I'm exercising my legal rights as a property owner. You can buy out my share, or we can sell the house and split the proceeds. Those are the options." "This is about Chloe's wedding," my mom said, her voice breaking. "You're jealous and you're punishing us." "Actually, this is exactly what Chloe requested. She asked me to disappear from the family. I'm doing precisely that." "She didn't mean," my mom started. "She meant it." I kept my tone flat, factual. "She said it explicitly, and neither of you contradicted her. You both sat there, nodded along, and made it clear where I stand in this family. So, I'm granting her wish." My dad slammed his palm on the table. "You can't blackmail us into pretending we don't prefer one daughter over the other. That's life. Parents have favorites. Get over it." The bluntness shocked even Marcus Thorne, whose eyebrows rose slightly. But I'd expected something like this. My dad had never been good at hiding his feelings. "I'm not asking you to pretend anything," I said. "I'm simply removing myself from a situation where I'm not wanted. You'll have more time and resources to devote to Chloe. Everyone wins. Except you're stealing our house." My mom's voice climbed higher, hysteria creeping in. "I'm not stealing anything. I'm claiming my legal share of an asset I partially own. If you can afford a $15,000 flower budget for Chloe's wedding, surely you can afford to buy me out." The truth was they probably couldn't. My dad had retired 2 years ago, and my mom had never worked outside the home. Their income came from my dad's pension and Social Security. They'd been planning to fund Chloe's wedding from savings. Savings that would be depleted by paying me fair market value for my portion of the house. "We'll fight this," my dad said, standing abruptly. "You can't force us to sell." Marcus Thorne cleared his throat. "Actually, Mr. Davis, she can. Under state law, any joint tenant can petition for a partition sale. The court will order it if you can't reach a voluntary agreement." "This is unbelievable," my mom said, looking at me like I'd become a stranger. "I never thought you could be this cruel." "I learned from the best," I replied quietly. They left without another word, my dad's hand on my mom's elbow, steering her out of the conference room like she might collapse otherwise. Through the window, I watched them cross the parking lot to their car, their movements stiff and disjointed. "That went about as expected," Marcus Thorne said after they'd gone. "They'll likely consult their own attorney, realize they have no legal recourse, and come back with a counteroffer." "Are you prepared to hold firm?" "Absolutely." Over the next 3 weeks, the situation escalated precisely as Marcus Thorne predicted. My parents hired an attorney who confirmed they couldn't prevent the partition sale. They tried negotiating a lower buyout price. I refused. They attempted to involve extended family members to pressure me. I ignored calls and emails from aunts, uncles, and cousins I barely knew. Chloe created a private social media group called Family Emergency and added every relative she could think of, posting a long, dramatic account of my betrayal. She painted me as vindictive and money-hungry, claiming I was destroying our parents' retirement security out of petty jealousy. I didn't defend myself. The people who mattered already knew the truth, and the people who believed Chloe's version weren't worth convincing. The real breaking point came when they realized they'd have to choose: pay me out of their savings, which would eliminate the wedding budget, or sell the house. My dad called Marcus Thorne directly. "Tell her if she goes through with this, we're canceling the wedding. All of it. We can't afford both." Marcus Thorne relayed the message. I told him to proceed with the partition sale. "They're going to hate you," he warned, though his tone was neutral, merely stating a fact. "They already do. Now, it's just honest." The house went on the market in early August. It sold within 3 weeks to a young family relocating for work, closing in 30 days at full asking price. After agent fees and closing costs, the net proceeds came to roughly $800,000, divided 4 ways. Each of us received $200,000. My mom called me once during this period, her voice hollow. "You're really doing this. You're really taking everything from us." "I'm taking exactly what I'm legally entitled to," I said, "nothing more. We can't afford the wedding now. We've had to cancel the venue, the caterer, everything." Chloe is devastated. A small, bitter part of me felt satisfaction at that news, but mostly I just felt tired. She asked me to disappear. I'm disappearing. This is what that looks like. "I hope you're happy," my mom said before hanging up. I wasn't happy, but I was free. The money from the house sale, combined with my savings and investments, totaled just over $400,000. I used it to make a down payment on a condo in Denver, 3 hours away. The architecture firm I worked for had offices nationwide. I requested a transfer to the Denver branch and was approved within a week. I sold most of my furniture, packed what mattered into a moving truck, and scheduled my departure for mid-September. Before leaving, I did one final thing. I drove to my parents' now empty house on a Thursday evening. They'd moved into a small rental apartment across town, taking only what fit into a 2-bedroom space. The house stood vacant, echoing and sad, waiting for the new owners to take possession. I had a key from before the sale. I let myself in, my footsteps loud on the bare hardwood floors. In the master bedroom where my parents had slept for 30 years, I left a single envelope on the windowsill. Inside was a letter handwritten on quality stationery. It read, "To Mom, Dad, and Chloe, *You asked me to disappear, so I have. You'll find that the silence I leave behind is exactly what you wanted. No more awkward family dinners where my accomplishments make you uncomfortable. No more obligatory invitations to events where I'm tolerated rather than welcomed. No more reminders that your favoritism was always obvious, always painful. I'm not writing this for closure or reconciliation. I'm writing it so you understand that this outcome was your choice, not mine. I spent 28 years trying to earn love I deserved by birthright. Chloe's wedding request was simply the moment I stopped trying. **** The money from this house is buying me a new life in a place where nobody knows me as the other daughter. Where my achievements matter, where my presence is valued. You'll have Chloe close by, and you'll be able to focus all your attention on her now, just as you always preferred. She'll give you grandchildren you'll dote on. She'll host gatherings you'll actually enjoy. Everything will be easier without me. But occasionally, in quiet moments, I hope you'll remember that families are built on more than blood. They're built on effort, respect, and love. I gave you all three for nearly 3 decades. You gave me scraps. This house was the last thing tying me to you. Now even that's gone. ***, don't contact me. Don't try to find me. You asked for my absence. This is what forever looks like. ***, Olivia. I placed the envelope carefully, making sure it would be visible to anyone entering the room. Then I walked through each space one final time. The kitchen where I'd been ignored during countless meals. The living room where family photos prominently featured Chloe while barely including me. The backyard where I'd watched them celebrate her achievements while dismissing mine. The house held 28 years of memories, most of them tinged with the ache of being unwanted. I locked the door behind me and dropped the key into the mailbox for the real estate agent to collect. My flight to Denver left the next morning. I'd already started at the new office remotely, impressing the senior partners with my sterling complex designs. My condo overlooked the mountains, floor-to-ceiling windows providing views of peaks and city lights. The space was mine alone, decorated to my taste, filled with furniture I'd chosen. For the first few weeks, I kept my phone on, half expecting messages, but there were none. My mom didn't call to apologize. My dad didn't reach out to rebuild bridges. Chloe remained silent, likely too busy salvaging what she could of her scaled-down wedding plans. Their silence confirmed what I'd always known. They were relieved by my absence. 3 months after my move, I was working late in my home office when my email pinged. The message came from an address I didn't recognize, but the subject line read, "You need to see this." Inside was a link to Chloe's social media profile, which I'd blocked but could still view if I wanted. Someone, probably a well-meaning former colleague from my old office, thought I should know what she'd posted. Against my better judgment, I clicked through. Chloe had married Liam in a small ceremony at the courthouse, followed by a backyard reception at their new apartment. The photo showed maybe 40 guests, simple decorations, grocery store flowers. Her dress was pretty, but clearly off the rack. The whole affair looked lovely in its modesty, but it was a far cry from the 300-guest extravaganza she'd planned. Her caption read, "Sometimes life doesn't go as planned, but I'm grateful for everyone who stood by us through difficult times. Family means everything." The comments were full of support from friends who knew nothing about what had actually happened. A few relatives posted sympathetic messages about overcoming challenges and staying strong. Nobody mentioned me. I'd been erased from the narrative completely, which was probably for the best. I closed the browser and returned to the designs I'd been working on, a sustainable housing project for low-income families. The work was fulfilling in ways my old job had never been, partly because I'd chosen it freely, without the weight of family expectations or the desperate need for validation. A year passed, then another. I made friends in Denver, dated occasionally, threw myself into my career. The firm promoted me to lead architect, giving me autonomy over major projects. I bought art for my condo walls, joined a book club, took weekend trips to Calgary and Boise. Life felt lighter without the constant undercurrent of not being enough. I changed my phone number, closed old social media accounts, and created new ones under a slightly different name. The digital trail from Olivia Davis to my current identity was intentionally difficult to follow. Sometimes I wondered if my mom ever opened that letter, if she read it and felt anything resembling regret. I wondered if my dad understood that his blunt admission about having favorites had been the final confirmation I needed to walk away guilt-free. I wondered if Chloe ever connected her wedding request to the complete disappearance that followed. Mostly, though, I didn't wonder about them at all. They'd wanted me gone. I was gone. The gift was given, received, and finalized. On what would have been Chloe's original wedding date, the lavish lakeside affair she'd planned, I treated myself to dinner at an expensive restaurant overlooking the city. I ordered champagne, toasted to absolutely nothing, and enjoyed a meal in peaceful solitude. The waiter asked if I was celebrating something special. Freedom, I told him. I'm celebrating freedom. He smiled politely, not understanding, but that was fine. Nobody needed to understand except me. Chloe had asked for the greatest gift, my permanent absence from their family. What I'd left in that empty house wasn't just a letter. It was the ghost of every ignored achievement, every dismissed hurt, every moment I convinced myself their indifference was something I'd imagined. The letter sat in that empty house for 3 days before anyone found it. I know because I'd set up a search alert for the property address, tracking any mentions online. The new owners posted on their neighborhood social media group about finding a strange letter during their final walkthrough, asking if they should forward it to the previous residents. Someone must have contacted my parents because that evening my old phone number, the one I hadn't changed yet, received a call from an unknown number. I let it ring through to voicemail. The message was from Chloe, her voice shaking with rage. "You're a vindictive, selfish human being," she hissed into the recording. "That letter? Really? You couldn't just leave quietly? You had to twist the knife one more time. Mom is crying her eyes out. And Dad won't even talk about it. I hope you're proud of yourself. I hope destroying this family was worth whatever sick satisfaction you got from it." There was a pause and I heard her breath catch. "We were supposed to be sisters. We were supposed to be there for each other. And you threw it all away over a wedding comment. Grow up, Olivia." The voicemail ended. I saved it, not out of sentimentality, but as a reminder of how thoroughly they refused to accept responsibility. A wedding comment. That's what she'd reduced it to. As if 28 years of being second choice could be summarized so dismissively. I blocked that number too and finally changed my phone entirely, getting a new number through my Denver carrier. The physical act of swapping the SIM card felt symbolic, like shedding an old skin. Work became my anchor during those transitional months. The Denver office had a different energy than the branch I'd left behind. People were collaborative without being invasive, friendly without demanding personal details. My supervisor, Julian Reed, appreciated my design aesthetic and gave me challenging projects that stretched my abilities. "You've got an eye for sustainable integration," he told me during a project review meeting. "The way you incorporated green space into the sterling complex design, that's exactly what we need for the waterfront promenade." The waterfront promenade project was massive. A mixed-use complex combining residential units, retail space, and public parks along the waterfront. Being selected as lead architect was a career milestone I'd worked toward for years. I threw myself into the work with an intensity that surprised even me. 16-hour days became routine. I'd arrive at the office before sunrise, watching the city wake up through my window, sketching preliminary designs while drinking coffee strong enough to strip paint. My colleague, Sarah Miller, noticed. She stopped by my desk one evening around 8, everyone else long gone, and leaned against the partition. "You know, there's this thing called work-life balance," she said, her tone light, but eyes concerned. "I'm working on something important," I replied without looking up from my drafting tablet. "Important enough to kill yourself over, because that's the trajectory you're on." I finally met her gaze. Sarah was in her mid-40s, brilliant and direct, someone who'd built her career through talent rather than politics. We connected over shared frustration with certain industry practices, bonding during late-night deadline crunches. "I'm fine," I said. "Just focused." Focused is good. Obsessed is concerning. She pulled up a chair, settling in despite my body language suggesting she should leave. "I've seen this before. Someone running from something, burying themselves in work because it's easier than dealing with whatever they left behind. Amateur psychology. Personal experience." She smiled without humor. "I divorced my husband 6 years ago. Spent the first year afterward designing every project like it was my last. Thought if I worked hard enough, proved my worth enough, it would somehow retroactively make me worthy of the love he'd withheld." Her honesty disarmed me. I saved my work and closed the tablet cover. "What made you stop?" "Ended up in the hospital with stress-induced chest pain. Doctors ran every test, found nothing physically wrong, and told me anxiety was literally breaking my body." She shrugged. "Sometimes you have to let yourself feel the pain instead of outrunning it." That conversation stayed with me. I didn't slow down immediately. Old habits die hard. But I started setting boundaries. I began leaving the office by 7, forcing myself to explore Denver's neighborhoods, trying restaurants alone, visiting museums, walking along the waterfront until my feet ached. The city revealed itself slowly. Larimer Square Market on Saturday mornings. The smell of fresh flowers and coffee mixing with the crisp mountain air. The Denver Art Museum's contemporary wing, where I'd stand in front of massive installations and let my mind wander. Local park trails, where I'd hike until the physical exhaustion matched the emotional kind. One Sunday afternoon in late October, I was walking through City Park when I passed a family having a picnic. 2 daughters, maybe 10 and 12, were flying a kite while their parents watched from a blanket. The younger girl struggled with the string and the older one ran over, helping her sister adjust the angle, both of them laughing when the kite finally caught wind. I watched them longer than was probably appropriate. This simple scene of sibling affection, wondering what my life might have looked like if Chloe and I had been that kind of sisters. If we built each other up instead of competing for scraps of parental approval. The wondering didn't hurt as much as it once would have. Time and distance were doing their work, scabbing over wounds I'd kept fresh through hope. My phone buzzed, The new number I'd given only to work contacts and a handful of carefully selected people. A text from Sarah, group dinner tomorrow night. Vietnamese place in Lodo. You're coming. It wasn't a question. I smiled and replied with a thumbs up. The dinner turned out to be 5 architects from the office gathering at a hole-in-the-wall restaurant with incredible pho and better company. We talked about projects, complained about clients, shared industry gossip. Nobody asked invasive personal questions. Nobody demanded I explain where I'd come from or why I'd moved. I realized somewhere between my second bowl of pho and an argument about the ethics of gentrification that I was genuinely enjoying myself. These people liked me for the work I produced, the insights I offered, the way I solved design problems. They didn't compare me to anyone else or find me wanting. Walking back to my car later, Sarah fell into step beside me. See, not terrible, right? Shockingly pleasant, I admit it. You've got this wall up, she observed. I get why, we all have our damage, but just so you know, you don't have to keep everyone at arm's length forever. Noted, I said, meaning it more than I expected. The holidays approached with the inevitability of a freight train. Thanksgiving, then Christmas, then New Year's, all the occasions designed to highlight family togetherness, to emphasize the importance of gathering with loved ones. I volunteered at a community kitchen on Thanksgiving, serving meals to people experiencing homelessness. The work was humbling and exhausting. A woman about my mother's age thanked me for the extra roll I'd added to her plate, her eyes watering with gratitude over such a small gesture. You're a blessing, she said, squeezing my hand. I thought about my mom, who'd probably spent the day at Chloe's apartment. The 3 of them gathered around a table, noticeably more peaceful without my presence to complicate things. Christmas I spent alone in my condo, ordering Chinese takeout and watching old movies. It was quiet, but not lonely. There's a difference, I was learning to appreciate. Loneliness implied wanting company you couldn't have. This was chosen solitude, deliberate and restorative. New Year's Eve found me at a firm party, champagne in hand, counting down with colleagues who'd become something close to friends. When midnight struck and people hugged and cheered, Sarah pulled me into an embrace. New year, new life, she said. You're doing great, by the way, in case nobody's told you lately. The words landed deeper than she probably intended. Nobody had told me I was doing great. Nobody had noticed my efforts, acknowledged my growth, recognized my struggle to rebuild from ashes. Thank you, I managed, my throat tight. January brought a bitter cold snap that froze the city solid. Snow fell in sheets, rare for Denver, turning everything white and pristine. I worked from home during the worst of it, video conferencing with the team about the waterfront promenade, refining designs from my dining table while watching snow accumulate on my balcony. During one particularly long conference call, my email pinged with a message from an address I'd never seen before. FamilyMatters2026@gmail.com. I almost deleted it without reading, assuming spam, but curiosity won. I opened it during a break in the meeting. Olivia, this is Aunt Carol, your mother's cousin. I got your email from a mutual contact at your old firm. I'm writing because I thought you should know that your mother has been hospitalized. She had a minor stroke last week. She's stable now, recovering at Centennial Health Center. I'm not asking you to come. I understand there's been a falling out, but I thought you deserved to know. She's asking for you, Carol. I stared at the screen, reading the message 3 times. A stroke. My mom was 62, relatively healthy as far as I knew, though stress and emotional upheaval could trigger these things. She's asking for you. Those 4 words carried weight I wasn't prepared to hold. The meeting resumed before I could process fully. I muted myself and turned off my camera, sitting in the gray winter light, wrestling with obligations I thought I'd severed. Sarah called after the meeting ended. "You okay? You seemed off during that last hour." I told her about the email. She listened without interrupting, then asked the question I'd been avoiding. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me thinks I should go, that it's the right thing despite everything. But another part knows going back would undo all the healing I've done." "Both parts are valid," Sarah said carefully. "There's no wrong answer here. You get to choose what you can handle." I sat with the decision for 2 days. The email opened on my laptop, taunting me with its implications. Chloe hadn't reached out directly. Of course, she hadn't. She probably blocked my old contact information just as thoroughly as I'd blocked hers. But my mom was asking for me. After everything, after the letter I'd left in the empty house, after months of silence, she wanted to see me. On the 3rd day, I made my choice. I replied to Aunt Carol, "Thank you for letting me know. I hope she recovers fully, but I won't be visiting. Please don't contact me again about family matters. Olivia." Hitting send felt like jumping off a cliff. The finality was absolute. Whatever bridge might have still existed between my old life and new one, I just burned it completely. Sarah was right. There was no wrong answer. But there were consequences either way, and I chose the consequences I could live with. My mom recovered. I learned through a second email from Aunt Carol that I read but didn't respond to. She had regained most of her mobility, was doing physical therapy, expected to make a full recovery. The stroke had been mild, a warning more than a catastrophe. I felt relief at the news, which surprised me. I didn't want her suffering, didn't wish her harm, but I also didn't want to be pulled back into a dynamic that had damaged me for decades. February arrived with a slow promise of spring. The waterfront promenade project was entering its final design phase, and Julian submitted my work to a national architecture competition. The entry included detailed renderings, sustainability reports, and a vision statement about creating public spaces that serve diverse communities. "You've got a real shot at this," Julian said, reviewing the submission package. "The judges are looking for exactly this kind of innovative thinking." I didn't let myself hope too much. I'd learned that lesson early. Expectation led to disappointment, especially when you needed validation from external sources. But 3 weeks later, Julian called me into his office wearing a grin that suggested good news. "You won," he said simply. The waterfront promenade design took first place. National recognition, a feature in Architectural Digest, and a $20,000 prize. I stood there absorbing the information like a delayed echo. I'd won. My work, my vision, my effort, my talent had been recognized on a national level. "Say something," Julian prompted, laughing at my stunned expression. "I won," I repeated, testing how the words felt. They felt good. They felt earned. The firm threw a celebration, champagne in the conference room, everyone congratulating me, shaking my hand, asking about my design process. Sarah hugged me so hard I almost spilled my drink. "This is huge," she said. "You understand that, right? This kind of recognition can transform a career." I did understand. For the first time in my professional life, I'd achieved something that stood entirely on its own merits, untethered from family approval or the desperate need to prove my worth. That evening, alone in my condo, I pulled up Chloe's social media out of morbid curiosity. She posted about her job, her marriage, mundane daily activities. Nothing about my mom's stroke, nothing about me, nothing that suggested I'd ever existed in her world. I closed the browser and opened Architectural Digest's website instead, finding the article featuring my work. There was my name, Olivia Davis, lead architect, alongside photographs of the renderings, quotes from my vision statement, recognition of my talent. This was the validation I'd been seeking my entire life, and it had come from strangers who judged my work objectively, without the baggage of sibling rivalry or parental preference. The house sold, the money split, the ties severed. They got exactly what they'd asked for. Have you ever had to choose yourself over the family you were born into?